The first question I want to ask you: politics,
Fashion,
Sexuality.
religion, films,
Nigeria.
sports, music. Because of my career, just ask. Right, hi. It's Ask for Me, another week and another guest. And my guest this day is fascinating because he's an unusual Nigerian chief. And he's, I shall shut up and just tell you who he is, and then we'll start talking. And you see why I'm laughing at the back of my mind. My guest today is Christian Purefoy. Christian is former CNN journalist in Nigeria. That's how lots of Nigerians know him. But more importantly, he's the brain, he's one of the founders behind Butterbox. People like to call it Butterbox. I say it's Butterbox. And Butterbox is groundbreaking online media platform doing these videos that is, I see them as futuristic, but then we're going to be talking about them in this time together. Hi, Christian.
FUNMI, how are you?
I'm
How
good.
now?
How now? How you doing?
Job now cool?
Job now, man. She. So shall I call you Chief?
No.
Chief Christian
Please.
Purefoy.
I should be the one prostrating.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So what title did you get?
Abasaga of Oshun Shobo.
Abasaga of
It's not Oshun Shobo, it's Iwo Oshun.
Iwo.
Abasaga.
What does it mean?
The one who promotes the village, the culture of the village.
Agbashag. Agbashag. Yes, that's it. That's a good one. Because I was trying to do the because of course, Yoruba dialects are many. So it could be one that I couldn't really understand.
Yes, it's the Oyibo pronunciation.
Yeah, it's the Oyibo pronunciation. You got used to being called Oyibo. When was the first time you heard yourself called Oyibo?
Oh, within the first couple of minutes.
In Nigeria.
I can't even remember it, but yeah.
What did you think it was when you heard it the first time?
I have no idea. I think probably when I walked into Nigeria, I mean, there were all sorts of things being shouted at me. So, taxi or Yibo, all sorts of things. So, money change. But the funny thing about that actually is it kind of changed. I was called Oyibo and then of course Bature in the north. But then it began to change. People, and I don't know how this happened, but it was like other things. It was like tallest. I'm, quite tall, 6'4", and then other things like I remember walking down the street once. Some guy shouted, "See London walking down the road." So all sorts of things.
When you got, had you been to West Africa before Nigeria? No. Oh,
I had no idea.
You had no, gosh. So take me back. When you got the call or whatever, I don't know how it works with CNN. So when you were told that Nigeria was the next destination, what did you think? What were you expecting?
I actually arrived in Nigeria long before CNN. I had this idea that I wanted to do journalism, and I had the option of free accommodation in either Nairobi or Lagos. And I knew Nairobi a little bit, so I took Lagos. And I had no idea about journalism, and I had even less idea about Nigeria. And I think I did a little bit of research, but that was just wasted. I mean, it was until I walked into the country, I had no idea. So yeah, and then I spent, how many years, I can't remember, 4 years or so being a freelance journalist, just working for papers, different channels. And then, sort of got a position at CNN and worked my way up, So no, it was completely, this is an unfair word to use, self-inflicted.
So, when you tell me the first day you got into Lagos, what did you think? Because I've always tried to picture, I'm so used to Lagos, I love Lagos. This is my life, this is my city. But then I've always tried to imagine what it is like for other people when they come in.
I think you know exactly what it's like because everybody has to go through it. The one thing I will never forget is the airport.
Oh, yeah.
And it's everything at that airport that I love. And I know they're trying to move it now and I'm getting nostalgic. I'm sure that a lot of people will be saying, that's ridiculous, But it's the smells, it's the when you're funneled in, you get that you get stairs on the left and a broken escalator on the right, the air conditioning, the range of the windows, the everything about it, and then the sort of tents, they've shifted it around a bit. It's like sort of moving chairs where things have improved, but actually you've still got like another checkpoint for your yellow fever. I don't know if you get checked for your yellow fever, but I do every time. And then it's the moment when you get out of the airport and heat.
The hate is like a wall. People say to me, it's like a wall.
Yeah, but also every country has its own smell.
Yeah.
And Nigeria has, it's like a rich soup.
Yeah. When I talk with you, I said Oyibo, for example. The equivalent for here would have been you walk into a place, here you're black, you're seen as black. I remember when I started saying to friends of mine, I mean, this was in the UK, it was earlier in my career when I started leaving Nigeria and I confronted the issue of being black. Before then I was not black, and I've got used to being black, but then it's that dichotomy, isn't it, between the immigrants and the expatriates. So if a person, like you were a young person, you came into Nigeria, you came into Lagos, you got an accommodation, I'm just going to go to Lagos and start, and you may have hated it and left or stayed, or we'll talk about your journey in Nigeria, but then that's not the experience of Africans coming into Europe, for example, or into America. It doesn't matter what status. I was saying to a friend of mine recently, I was walking down the road in Hampstead and there was a woman in front of me. It was a little dark. And when she noticed that it was a black woman, she held onto her purse very tightly because she was afraid I was going to snatch her purse. And what offended me most was that it was a cheap purse. Nobody worth their salt in Lagos would steal a purse like that. But you know what I mean. So that difference between, just because by race, your status changes on just getting on a plane and changing countries for blacks. So why do you think it's like that here still?
The first thing is, the one thing I kind of loved about Nigeria is, yes, I was Oyibo, but the idea of race in Nigeria, there's, it doesn't really, that sort of white-black thing, it doesn't really exist.
It doesn't exist.
And I absolutely love that. I've been to other places in the world where it does for all sorts of, significant, relevant reasons. But I don't enjoy that feeling.
Yeah.
I don't like it at all. And Nigeria, I don't get that. But at the same time, Nigeria, I think, doesn't rank you on race, it ranks you on money.
Yes.
So, because I'm Oyibo, I'm white, I will have a certain amount of money and I'll be treated in a certain way because of that. One thing on the race issue, though, is, I encountered, I think, worst race, and I'm obviously not black in London or Britain, I don't know. I encountered worse racism in Nigeria between ethnic groups.
Yeah.
So this is a thing that you just get everywhere. And I think, whether you're British moving into, or a white guy moving into Nigeria, or a Nigerian moving to Gay, or a Yoruba walking into, an Igbo walking into Hausa, you're going to encounter that other. And I think it's simply a matter of scale.
Yeah.
How do you deal with it? Well, that's a whole other conversation.
So that's why I'm interested in news, because what people say is that whether it's Yoruba against Igbo, the Scots and the English or the Welsh, because living here you begin to see those differences quite starkly, that it's really about the information that is available to people. Prior to the internet news era, news was more controlled, the narrative was much more controlled. So I find that I have lots of friends who would say, and genuinely, they've never encountered Africa in the way Africa is, they just don't see it in the news. And we also don't encounter Europe or America the way she really is. We encounter, a narrative, of it that's not total in that way. And the internet was supposed to change all of that so that people see one another. So you see, we're all really, at the end of the day, the same. But it didn't seem to be making that difference. Why is news not changing the world? Why is information not changing perception? Why is the other still the other? People seem to be digging in further into nationalism and ethnicity and all of those divisions. Why?
I think the simple answer to that is the internet is broken. The best example I've heard of it is the car crash analogy.
Yeah.
So you have, if you're driving past a car crash, you're walking past a car, whatever, you will look. It is in human nature to look, or at least try not to look. You have to imitate something. And that is human nature. Now, on the internet, what's happened is, if there's a car crash, or if there's a, oh my goodness, what the hell's that? People click on it. And the internet is run by machines. It is a click machine. Google and Facebook will give you more of what you click. So when you click on something, it will give you more of it. And then it learns throughout the internet that this is what human beings click on. So, and because it's, people make money with the more clicks, they want more money, so they get more clicks. So those car crashes
Are
get more
rising to the
frequent
top.
and they rise to the top. And that is an enormous problem, and I don't know how it's even barely fixable. And then that plays into all of these other problems. And then, of course, obviously you have other problems, like on Twitter. On Twitter, if someone makes a statement, the way the social media platform is constructed, it's not there for agreement. It's there for a level playing field, so everyone must think and feel the same. But you don't, obviously.
Yeah.
You've got your own, because this is a platform which you voice your opinion, and you are different to everybody else.
Some people will say that America had a car crash, and it's interesting that the person to seemingly first popularize the phrase fake news is the current president of America. And he's also benefited from this car crash rising up, he's benefited from it to get into the White House. And I'm fascinated by all of that, what it really means and where we're going with the idea of information. Because the argument now is that, well, shouldn't the internet be curated? Shouldn't we be going back to a form of editorial control over the internet? So that at the end of the day, because then everybody's getting a panicked sense that all we are these car crashes.
Yeah. You turn on the internet and you see explosions of
bombs. You don't that.
Okay, and I think in this respect, Nigeria is ahead of the game and has been for quite some time, because this idea of fake news, when I was a journalist in Nigeria, it was very real. You would have different people, different segments, different politicians trying to get their view across in a way that was, I think, more difficult here in the West, because you had these these institutions, these magnates, these newspapers that controlled it, and they had their expectations. That now has completely changed here because of the internet. So you still have journalists. My argument is you don't have a news agenda. The news agenda is no longer set by these big newspapers, these big broadcast stations. They will occasionally come out with the big thing, but what it is it's the thing that is most clicked on. It's people, that's why my whole thing with the internet is it's your responsibility is my responsibility. If you share something that's fake news, that's your responsibility because you're putting it out there.
But you don't know it's fake news. Oftentimes people don't know. And there are different levels of engagement. It's like what they say, the Facebook jungle, where your mothers, your aunties, all of them are, some of them from the village. And it's not that village people are not knowledgeable. It's just, that's what a person's been presented and they're just going to share it like human beings do. The argument also actually is that people say we're being unfair to the internet because actually traditional news, traditional information too, had an agenda.
Oh, an enormous issue.
Because it had an agenda, this other is the same thing, because the agenda of news, aside from everybody's sub-narrative, is to tell, if it bleeds, it leads. It's still a form of car crash. It's just a less grotesque car crash. So we've substituted less grotesque car crashes for grotesque ones. And so nothing has really changed. And what needed to change in the first instance was more nuanced news. Is that something crazy? Am I crazy to have expected that in the first instance, that we should really be having what I call wise news?
Wise news. But what is wise news? Who decides the wisdom of what? And that will be the issue. In theory, you do now choose. You have the choice to choose what news you have. The issue is, and again, it's true. One of the other things about the internet is it's an echo chamber. Your Facebook feed, my Twitter feed, I will see, for example, the people I follow suddenly do herd mentalities, often splitting into two groups, but sometimes just one about one particular story. And everyone goes, and if you try and put up your hand and say, excuse me, I don't disagree with this, they all pile in on you. And that, So it's self-regulated, but it's an echo chamber, and people follow things that they like, they get given things they like. Again, that is, you would read the newspaper that you liked before. In theory, I suppose, the newspaper thought sometimes it had a responsibility to give you something else, but it was still an echo chamber. Yeah, so it is. The problem is human beings, but the problem now is it's up to us. We can't blame some newspaper, or 5 newspapers or 5 TV channels. No, we have all the information in the world, and the problem with that is it's too much. We can't deal with it.
I have a theory that we are moving from news to town criers. So, so for example, in traditional Yoruba society, there would be trusted person. You do not become a news carrier unless you were trusted to be able to make that sort of, editorial. It's fascinating when you start studying it, because all of a sudden it occurs to me that people are now following people they trust. And so trust is relative, because it could be maybe because this person has this point of view, they like that. Or generally, people are just following personalities rather than news platforms.
Okay, so yes, but I would also add on to that and say not so much, they're trusting their opinion. Because often these people online they're not making calls to Maiduguri to find out how many people were killed in a suicide bomb. They are taking a nugget that was taken, so there's a suicide bomb in, Maiduguri, and, numerous times when I was covering, I would get different figure from each person I called. So, of how many people were killed. So, you then have to go with the police or the military, which, the official source, that is, in theory, the most reliable. But, they've also got their agenda. So, and that is where the nugget of fake news spreads, because there's a seed of doubt in, if an incident happened in this room right now, okay, we would all have a different opinion on how it happened. Mm-hmm. So we know that one person is lying dead on the floor, but how did it happen and why? And that is the problem with fake news. And that is why then you follow people, who you trust, but you trust their opinion. And that is what the internet is now. Yeah. Sort of that echo chamber is getting worse and worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. What will shift that? What will send us back? Because even the town criers were not sharing opinions. They were sharing information that were confirmed. You would have gone to the palace, somebody in the palace would have said yes, they would have asked, and then they would go out and say, yes, this is the news. And that was what the traditional news was. That's, shaking. I find this time fascinating, because it's that kind of time is entropy, isn't it? We're still going to have to find the balance. And this is the process of trying to find the balance. Nigeria being ahead, because oftentimes we don't think of Nigeria being ahead in many ways. I think Nigeria is ahead I think that the fact that Nigeria's institutions are not strong in some ways gives us tremendous opportunity to build, kind of like just live forward. Because a lot of the things that were taken for granted in the 19th and 20th century development are themselves shaky now. So since we didn't build that, we can go forward. We don't have to take those steps. But we don't seem to understand that. Everybody is fixated on this idea of, the internet is broken, fake news is killing us. What are we missing that we need to focus on that might be
so the world should be watching the world should be watching Nigeria. So this is not going to go down well with some people, but the last election in Nigeria was leading the way in some ways. It presaged Brexit and Trump and all of this. You had an election. Now, obviously, a lot of Nigerians are not on the internet, but the internet did have an enormous impact, I think, on the influences in society, in the urban places and all this. You did have this idea that the internet was having an impact. I think it really did in the last election. But if you tried to stand up and make a reasoned argument about either of the two candidates, okay, and I remember having conversations with people about Goodluck Jonathan and Muhammadu Buhari, okay, and I was, I think a lot of people now stand up and say, well, I told you it was going to. I remember having debates with people about this, and it was completely ignored. It was, this guy is the way forward. Now, that was, based on all sorts of fake news stories, all sorts of just, they weren't listening to the, to the argument. They were just believing. Mm-hmm. That is what, a lot of Brexit and Trump is all about as well. This idea of the internet being broken and the echo chambers and all of that sort of feeds into this idea. And that's why I'd say, watch Nigeria, because Buhari in many ways was a populist president.
Yeah.
He's got in, and you're seeing a lot of the other issues that we're seeing with a lot of the other populist ideas. And where is that going to go? Where's Nigeria going to take this? It's very interesting. And we're going to find out.
Predict the next 2 years for Nigeria.
Oh, okay.
Are
The
you
next 2
joining
years
us
is
news?
easy. No, the next 2 years is easy. As long as Buhari stays alive, nothing's going to change. So that's easy, and that's not necessarily a good thing. But it's going to be a lot of jostling for the next election. What happens at that next election, we are too far away, and often there's a lot of rumors and predictions. Buhari didn't really come in the last election until you could almost have said the last 6 months. 6 months up to it really you weren't sure how that APC alliance was going to hold, all of those things. So we're way too far ahead of the game to know what's going to happen.
What's your opinion on Jonathan Goodluck? What do you think went wrong with him?
No, nothing went wrong with him. He was what he was. He was a man that was a politician in the PDP in the Niger Delta. And if you don't know what that's all about, then you just read up on what the point of being a politician in the Niger Delta is all about. It's about money, and that's how he ended up at the top. That's what the PDP. That's what a lot of Nigerian politics. A lot is an understatement. Is about, and he was pushed into the center of this system through luck, and also I think the system itself promotes weak characters because they can be manipulated and have to pay everybody off. And it was it was a nightmare. He did one thing right. He gave up power.
But also, you were talking earlier about something important because it's all over the world. Make America Great Again, to the near miss with France. I don't know if it's a near miss. It's everywhere. The world seems to be kicking back against something. Some say it's globalization. People seem to want to tunnel back into their own cultural identity, or whatever that might mean, or national identity. I mean, with Brexit in particular, Britain fascinates people. People don't understand that Britain, as a country, or the United Kingdom, might feel that she's being shortchanged.
Yeah.
People don't understand it because this was a lot of what we know, particularly, the relationship with Europe was as a result of, lessons learned from the Second World War, what needs to be done to keep the region stable and all of that. It's too late to say what went wrong because, of course, whether it's hard Brexit or soft Brexit, which I don't really know, it is Brexit. What does it really mean?
For me, I'll tie it into my relationship with Nigeria and the UK. It is a kickback against a myriad of problems, and in this particular relationship, so if Nigerians are sort of curious, the largest amount of people trying to cross the Mediterranean into Europe right now are Nigerians. This is a conversation not really being spoken about in Europe, and definitely not being spoken about in Nigeria. And that ties into all sorts of issues. Now, there are all sorts of reasons on both sides, problems and challenges and opportunities for this situation. But that's the form of globalization that I think people are sort of kicking back at. There's a feeling of something's out of control. And there's concern on both sides, I think.
How should it have been handled? What would have been, because
honesty. With honesty. And it's not. And what's that? So in Britain, for example, when the politicians stand up and don't deal with the issue of immigration, people feel that their voices aren't being heard, and therefore they listen to the extremes on either side, and then that centre just gets the air pulled out of it.
Right. Yeah. What will tackling the issue of immigration mean, really? What would it mean?
It means a serious, concerted effort by Europe, and in this case, Nigeria, on the whole chain of it. You've got to make the end when people arrive on the shore that they're taken care of, that they're not funneled into ghettos, that they've got support, and that also there's a publicity and a public awareness about hold on, racism is not the answer here, as we were discussing earlier. But then you've got to take that right the way back into Nigeria and say, why do these people want to leave?
Yeah.
And why is it not being dealt with here? And it has to be dealt with at the source. That is the key.
With America, it was the sense of terrorism, and terrorism related, purportedly related to, a religious group. How much of it is also a sense, you used a very important term where you said not being tackled, so you get a sense that it's worse than it is perhaps, or is it as bad as people think it is? There's a lot of refusing to deal with issues, and therefore creating even a groundswell, an underground swell of resentment and anger. So dealing with the issue of terrorism and the issue of whatever connection there might be with terrorism and religion, dealing with the issue, as you've said, with Nigeria, and the people coming out of Nigeria. There's somebody who's argued before that, but it's not that, people say it's not so bad once you actually understand what the larger issues are, that maybe a lot more people won't leave. I don't know, And then there's the argument that, why do we still have these national boundaries? Why do we still stop people from moving? Why don't we let human beings go and come wherever it is they want to go? Give them the paper, stay for a while, go back. That actually, naturally, lots of people will return to base. Which is the way to go?
Okay, let's be constructive.
It's a lot of, I know it's a lot of, because it's all in my head and I want to get it out. And I want to have a conversation with somebody about it without guilt and without political couching, because I'm afraid that people would be angry with me. Because I think that we should be angry at the system. We have to change something.
Okay, two things on that. That last comment, Trump completely negates, you don't have to worry about anything you say anymore. Because someone who says what Trump says is the President of the United States. So you can say whatever you want. I would try and take it constructively. So, the world, yes, there's an enormous amount going wrong right now. And this is not a time that the world, global warming, all these things, that we want it to go wrong.
Yeah.
But also you have to look at it and go, well, globalization pulled more people out of poverty than ever in human history. If you're a human being, this is the dream time. You were in a cave, and now you're, on a phone with medication that will make you live till unprecedented, years. So it's good. We've never had it so good. But at the same time, there's all these things going wrong, and what do you have to do? People want change. I think that all these things are, from France to Brexit to Buhari, changey. It's people wanted something that the system would change. It had run that last neoliberalism, whatever you want to call it, had run its course, and people want something else. What that is, I think we're gonna find out. Again, the voices at the moment have been given over to deconstructive voices. I think Brexit is deconstructive, Trump is deconstructive, but that could change. But where is it going? I don't know. But yes, take a sort of step back and go, hold on. This is a moment. In the next president of the US could be someone completely different in 2 years' time. Maybe not. It's making sure that you build it and you work towards it. Yeah.
Maybe the purpose of some sort of news now should be just crafting new narratives to assure people that this is actually normal. This is a transition from what we know to wherever we're going now. Perhaps that will give people a bit more. I don't know.
You're being optimistic. This is a human beings like change. The British love to break down the system, from Thatcher to everything else. We love to break it down and rebuild it. I'm not saying this is all a good way to do it, but that does seem to be what's going on. And, hopefully there is a sort of light at the end of the tunnel of this. I have a lot of criticism for what's going on, and I'm not particularly optimistic. And also, swinging back round, to Nigeria, that is one place in the world actually where it hasn't got better. And I think people are screaming for some sort of constructive change, and that energy has to be harnessed. When you look at the figures, poverty in Nigeria has actually, gone up. That's not cool. How do you deal with that? Hopefully democracy, the next election, it will get better. We've got to remember, this was the first transfer of power proper, from one party to another in Nigeria. That was hugely significant. Again, trying to look back at it from a constructive point of view. But
Yeah, I do agree with you that, Nigeria and there should be some dialogue about even the sort of maybe, it's about different leadership, I think. I just had a mental picture in my mind where if we accept that, look, a lot of our people are leaving because this situation just is untenable for human beings. And you cannot have a country where everybody goes to. It's just not going to work unless we decide that we're going to do free movement. Then maybe we want to renegotiate the terms of engagement between the two countries to open up opportunities actually in Nigeria that both countries are, invested in. But then of course it requires a certain kind of leadership also in Nigeria. And those are some of the kind of conversations I am hoping that we will hear, where we know that, look, who's going to support us in this rebuilding process for Nigeria?
Totally. One idea that I will throw out there is, there is the idea of a visa for a visa.
Yeah.
And you're going to suddenly see the challenges with this, but also the opportunities. So, a Nigerian will get a visa for a British visa. And everyone always says, if you're a Brit or a Nigerian, you don't know how difficult it is to get a visa. So if you could turn that on its head and go, well, if this Nigerian wants to get into Britain, then here's a British person who wants to get into Nigeria, to open up investment, to open up those opportunities. The problem is you immediately see the challenge. Mm-hmm. You go and talk to the Nigerian population and say you could have 500,000 British people moving into your country. I think there could be a problem with that, as there would be if 500,000 Nigerians decided to move over to the UK. It's a funny thing with human beings, this thing of the other. How do you jump that?
Yeah.
And that feeds into your thing about nationalism.
Yeah.
And that I see is the big issue now.
Okay, there are big issues and I can't solve them right now. But then I can talk about, you already took the leap of coming to Nigeria and actually starting a business. I mean, Butterbox, I remember when you mentioned it the first time, I'm like, what is it doing? And then I started seeing, I really like those videos. What I like about them is I've always wanted to give voice to the I hate the term everyday person and things like that. I just want the person on the street in Nigeria to be heard, to be given a voice.
Today's stories is about toys. Not just any toy. I'm talking about these toys over here. As you can see, I'm holding in my hand a sex toy. Yes, a sex toy. Would you buy a sex toy?
Sorry?
Would you buy a sex toy?
A sex toy. A sex toy. Yeah.
Sex?
Sex toy.
Sex toy?
Yep.
Sex toy? What do you mean by that? I won't.
Okay.
I will never. I don't really fancy such.
The story we're about to do today is long overdue. We've been postponing it for weeks, for like months. But today, not today, we must get that story done. It's about paying claims. It's what we've done. Now you remember, right? Okay, so join me as I take you up. There is where the magic takes place. So let's go.
What did you want to achieve with Butterbox? And why did you call it Butterbox? You and Yemisi, Butterbox. Yemisi and yourself.
Yes, my amazing, wonderful co-founder Yemisi. She came up with the name Bata. We were there was all sorts of ideas, and then thrown it on the table. We sort of had the idea of box. We liked that. It's a nice sort of confident sounding end to the word. What would we put at the beginning of it? Bata. Okay, yeah, great.
So Bata is in the big talking drum.
And that is obviously.
And it's form of life, is a dance, You're
sending a message, it's a form of dance, a form of life, it's all of those things wrapped up, and we absolutely love it.
So tell me what the experience has been like with Butterbox.
It has been a profound experience. It has been, it's been absolutely life-changing. I've loved it, I've learned so much. Butterbox has been an amazing success for me. For all sorts of things. First of all, we've been running for how many years now? It's a private company in Nigeria. 5 years I think we've been going, and that's an incredible feat for really pushing the boundaries. I mean, we started with video entertainment at a time when people were just about getting photos on their mobile phones. So we were a little too ahead of our time, but we've really. But I think I would like to think we really helped open up that space. There's a lot of people now doing what we do, and yes, that's a challenge. It's competition, but that's a good thing. It means BatterBox has succeeded. It's we are a success. It means other people are doing what we're doing. And also, it's trying to stay ahead of that whole media agenda that we're talking about.
Should those other people do what you're doing include corporate organizations who should be actually advertising, sponsoring, partnering with BatterBox to make content?
Well, as BatterBox director, no. If I was a director of one of those companies, I could see why they would do it. But I don't think that would be their route to success. The banks, for example. I mean, they've all set up these private YouTube channels. I'm not going to name any names. All of them have got them, and that is they're doing it because they want to promote their brand. The problem is they're doing shows that don't have anything to do with banking. They're just great fun shows. So they're sponsoring people to go out and make stuff that they love. And yes, somehow, people might hear about the bank itself. Whether that helps promote the bank and what the services they sell, I don't know. And it puts a blanket over the rest of us because not only, you try getting a loan from a Nigerian bank, and then you try, then competing against someone who has an enormous amount of money and does not sponsor itself on your channel, because the bank is not there to do video production. That's our job. So, spread the wealth, spread the love. This is not necessarily just my argument, by the way. There was a wonderful article by Jason Njoku just on this thing, what are the banks in Nigeria there for? At the moment,
I'm with Jason. I don't think they should be doing it, primarily because I think that creatives, the idea of making creative content is completely different from the way it's not banking. And I think that the banks would benefit better if content making companies, are bigger and stronger to make the kind of content that the banks can piggyback on to actually become beloved of the people. It's exactly what you're saying earlier. So they have the platform, people are making content, a lot of the content's nice, but to be able to make, you need actually heft to make to make things better. And there aren't enough. One of the challenges with the media, I think, in Nigeria, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that because Nigeria is still growing, when I started the media, there were no banks. There were like maybe 5 banks, and there were no telcos, and there wasn't any of these companies. So if you didn't get your money from NNPC, or you didn't get it from the Nigerian Stock Exchange, that was in the 90s. That was late 90s. So a lot of things have changed, and I think that with time, the banks and all these other organizations will realize that actually it's much more better to put your money in content makers who concentrate on content making, but we'll see how it goes.
So if a bank put the money that it was spending on one of its TV channels, with very high production standards, into BatterBox and the rest of us, sponsored it, that does several things. It gives us money. And when we have money, we're a private company, we want to grow, we see an opportunity. We're not doing this for the fun of it. We are definitely not doing this for the fun of it. It is very, very hard in Nigeria. And once they sponsor us and they promote that, we then have more money. We hire more staff. When we hire more staff and we're able to pay more people wages, those people go out and buy stuff. That then feeds into the economy grows, the bank grows, people come looking for loans. If BatterBox grows and we're getting more money, we will be going to the bank and saying, we need a loan. We, of course, will be paying our interest because we need that money to grow because these big opportunities are coming up. Instead, they're doing the opposite. They're sucking the money out of, and they're just recycling it in themselves.
In the system. But I hope people understand it for what it is. And that's what I mean also, that actually, because actually, I think that this is also where policy can help. This is why I say that people who go into government at different levels, certainly in entertainment, need to also look rigorously at policies that will encourage real growth. Not the substance of it, not the appearance of it, but the substance, what will actually create growth within the industry. But these are conversations we'll be having as we go along. Where do you find your presenters and all of those people from? There's a girl on Batterbox. She's so engaging.
According to the indigenous of this town, they say they have a favorite soup that influences multiple beds in Igbora. I don't know how it's being cooked, but I have someone with me here who is going to help us to cook Ilasa. So this is the okra leaf, Ilasa. So we are done buying all the ingredients, so we are going home to do the cooking. I can't wait. I love this part. So hopefully in the next few months, I'm going to have twins, maybe 2 times, or 4 times, or 6 times, according to the indigenous.
I can see all the work that's been done at using very basic tools. That if I could see how that show and that girl, how we could scale it up and make it something really, and something we can then export also. We never think that our content can be of such quality that other people will be interested in it and might buy it.
The biggest success during my time in Nigeria, I think beyond a shadow of doubt, was Nollywood. Mm-hmm. Absolute global success. Okay, you've got telcos and banks and all this sort of stuff, but I think, just as a national, celebration, Nollywood is an absolutely incredible feat. And it is watched all over the world by, absolutely everybody. And that will, help give me the impetus to do Batterbox. I looked at this amazing success from the ground up, really pulled, the filmmakers pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. And that's sort of what, Batterbox is doing. And we want to take that success and we really want to push it with the internet and mobile phones and all of that. And the whole thing about Nollywood and where your question about where do we get our presenters ties in is it's unashamedly Nigerian. And I try as much as possible to stay out of the story process. I'll do all the technical stuff, but you could give me $1 million and I could go and make a Nollywood movie and nobody would watch it. Mm-hmm. I could give one of my presenters, 10,000 naira, go and make a Nollywood movie, and they would, because they get the stories. I'm not Nigerian, I haven't been brought up in this. So that's what Nollywood is. It's telling original stories by Nigerians for Nigerians. And who cares what the rest of the world thinks about this? If we've got a 10-second shot of a hat on a table, which a lot of these Nigerian movies do, who cares? This is our thing, we're doing it. And the storylines. So we go out and we get presenters that we get them straight out. And again, this goes back to the bank thing. We get them straight out of university. I mean, these were all graduates. They had no idea, about film production or anything. And we train them up, and now they are absolutely. I think top class. They're some of the best in Nigeria. These presenters, and the whole team, the whole technical team. And that, so that's what we want. The example is one of our girls, she has an H factor. Mm-hmm. Who the hell cares? I don't care, and people love her for it. There'll always be a moment, comments saying, "This girl, she needs to speak properly or something." It's like, no big grammar on Batterbox.
Yes, let her do what she wants to do. Yeah, at the beginning of my career, I still get it. Oh, you have an accent, and I'm like, what do you mean exactly? How did you expect me to sound? I'm not British. Yeah. I'm not American. And what part of the United Kingdom would I have come from? Which accent would it be? Irish or Welsh or English, or which one? And even in London, there's South London accent, there's North London, so what are you talking about? So I want to, there was a question that I was meant to ask you at the beginning, because I got carried away, because the way we do this show is that you help me answer one question that comes from the audience. and then you can ask me any question you want to ask me. And there's a question I thought was interesting that I would like you to help me answer. And this one is, do you think the job of taking care of the older generation is a family's responsibility or the society's responsibility? I don't know what this person means. This person is not in Nigeria. If they're in Nigeria, don't ask that question. What do you think?
Obviously, it's both. And it depends on what state your family's at. I mean, there's a moment where your family cannot be looked after at home. They have to go to a care home, they have to go to a hospital because, goodness knows what your situation is. It depends on money and their health. If you've got the money to look after someone, it's a lot easier. If they're in good health, or then, for example, if their mind is okay, then it's easier. But there's a moment where maybe you don't have the money, and and they're not in good health, and you need help, you need support, and that's where the state comes in. And as a family, my family might watch this. I want to look after them as long as possible. I ship my parents off to a nursing home, but there might be a moment, with family where that's just not possible, and therefore the state has to be able to support you. But I think, to be honest, I think there's an interesting theme behind that question, and that is because the whole world is dealing with this issue now of people are living longer, and the state can't cope with the fact that they're supposed to be paying for pensions for 30 years. It's not how the system was sort of originally designed. But there's also another thing which is hitting Nigeria really hard, and again, it's not talked about. It's the family structure. That question is relevant for so many people, I think, because the family structure is disintegrating in Nigeria. It's disintegrated in the UK. You've got the unit, but even that, children's relationship with their parents is often broken. And that was unthinkable, really, 50 years ago. I mean, in Nigeria, for goodness sake, let's say 50 years ago, but, you would be there for your parents, you wouldn't, leaving home, and it's the pull of the urban centres that has emptied out all sorts of reasons, but one big one, I think, is this urban lifestyle that is doing this, and it's not addressed in Nigeria. I think there aren't many places in the world that have a family structure left. India is one of them. I increasingly think that Africa is not. Please tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that family structure and that that question is relevant because who should look after older people? If you're a young guy working in a bank and you've got kids to look after, and Nigeria is in an economic recession, and your mother is in, Ogun State or something, Ocean State, then, how are you going to deal with that? And she's not, you can't look after her at home.
I have an anecdote for that because I was asking a friend of mine that I don't see a lot of old people on the streets in Lagos anymore, just walking about, because, well, it's rapidly urbanized. It's not really suited for older people. So I say, okay, so where's everybody's parents? And they've moved. In fact, older people seem to like they're moving. So they move in Lagos, for example, they'll be in Badagry, they'll be in Ikorodu, or they would have moved to Ibafor, parts of Ogun State and all of that. And then others, of course, still live in the village and the towns. So already, quite right, because of urbanization, because of, just when the economy is tough, it becomes like that. And so we are not addressing it. What role should the state play, in supporting people, in old age, or supporting younger people to take care of their parents? And the other thing I think, answering this person's question is generally and across board, I think there's a stigmatization of inability, for example, to take care of a parent or a family member who is ill. So I know what it's like to have long-term illness, and it's tiring for the family to deal with. It is tiring, and it is good to have some sort of support system where the family gets a break, or at least the family gets supported to do, to play this role. So I think on two levels for Nigeria, we should even start the conversation. Look at what within the system needs to be done. Accept that it's not the way it used to be, that older people are suffering. It's not just, I know lots of people, they just leave their parents in the village. you know, and if they are lucky, the villages are still vibrant, they have people to talk to live with, to do things with. But oftentimes that's not even happening. So yes, there's a conversation that needs to be had. And then of course, in other parts of the world where they already have some sort of system, to really look at the system, because of course, yeah, people are getting old, and I can see a resentment here, for example, between younger people and the so-called baby bloomers. Oh, they had all the fun, and then we're going to have to take care of them, you know, when they get older. So yes, I don't know if it will help this person, really. But I think I agree with you that it's not either or. It's going to be a careful balance of both. All right, so what else do I want to ask you that I hadn't asked you? Let me look at my questions and see again that I wanted to ask you. Why do you love Nigeria so much? And I'm assuming you love Nigeria. You cannot just love Nigeria. If you live in Nigeria for this length, you do love Nigeria. What I hear is that you just love Nigerian women.
This one's going to go out on the internet, so I'm not answering that. Why do I love Nigeria? I'll preface this by saying Nigeria has an enormous amount of problems, so everybody knows that anyway. I love Nigeria. It has been incredibly welcoming to me. Almost everybody I have met has welcomed me as a stranger, and I think that's part of the Nigerian culture. It's, you know, when you're a guest, when you're a foreigner, you know, you're welcome. You're made to feel welcome, and from the very beginning, you know, as we talked at the beginning, when I stepped out of that airport, yeah, a lot of shouting, a lot of confusion, a lot of everything else, but it wasn't. I wasn't made to feel unwelcome, and that's very important. Yeah. And then you can just build on that, and you know, and I have, you know, Nigeria, despite all its problems, has allowed me enormous opportunities. And then obviously, you know, you can get into the food, the music.
They said to me that Christian said he wanted jollof rice. I was like, yes, it's properly Nigerian now. Yeah. Can you tell, I mean, you know, I hate to get into it, but of course, even though I roll my eyes, I know that, you know, I mean, which is your preferred jollof rice?
Oh, yeah. You want to kill me.
Better not make a mistake. Which is your preferred? Niger jollof, the yellow jollof rice, not all that brownish Ghanaian thing going on there.
No, that one just watery rice with tomatoes. Proper Nigerian.
That is the best answer. Do you know that is the best answer?
Never be able to go to Ghana again.
Yeah, you're
not amongst Ghana would do terrible.
Oh, yeah, that's true. You are going to expand. You have plans to expand?
We'd love to, one step at a time. Nigeria is a big one.
Nigeria is huge. You know, once you crack Nigeria, you really have done well. Then it's easy to go anywhere. Actually, that will happen of its own right once you crack Nigeria properly. You know, I think in that regard. So, Christian, you get the chance to ask me the one question. One question only. Be gentle.
Okay. If you could have one present, anything, what would it be?
Anything at all?
Anything.
I would like for the circumstance or situation to present itself where a crop of leaders, new leaders, end up somehow, and it has to be a crop, I don't think it's just the one person, you know, get into leadership position in Nigeria at all the key levels and start to make the changes that need to be made. You know, I don't know, even if it's just one person, just to make the changes that will push us towards productivity. You know, so that Nigeria moves from a patronage system to a more productive system. I know that this is just a bit, it seems, you know, everybody's talking about restructuring now, and nobody even knows what restructuring means itself. But I think that, you know, even if we just organize the regions better, if we organize the regions to be much more stronger, maybe bigger, so that there's less wastage, if we could do those, if we could just get the leaders who would do what needs to be done, who would just not be about, I really don't care what the ethnic agenda is. I don't care. I really want to make sure that the Nigerian economy and the Nigerian system and the Nigerian people become as viable as they are vibrant. We are already vibrant. How do we take that individual vibrance into collective excellence as a nation. I'm not unhappy with not seeing the end of it. There's never an end of it. But just to see the beginning of the process, where, for example, like it happened with Buhari, when Buhari came in, you know, there had been all the people immediately, you go here, you go here, you go here, you go here, you know. You don't have to answer it, you don't have to have all the answers now, but let us see that we're actually doing it. So I would hope for something like that, you know. That would be a nice...
Yeah, nothing too big.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how else to put it. You know, I just want Nigeria to do well. Shall I just say I want Nigeria to do well? If you could wave a magic wand, Nigeria is doing better than it used to, but I just want us to begin to inch properly and concertedly towards that potential that we've been talking about since 1960. That's what I'd like. But if you don't have that, I'll take some gold bars. Just give me a few gold bars.
When we finish this, I'll go out to my, outside my bag and I'll bring them in.
Just a few gold bars. That would do. That would do. Thank you, Christian. I think we're gonna leave it.
Give me a hug.
You're proper Naija now, huggy kissy and all of that. London people don't do it. I hate that. You move towards the other like, person, come, let me give you a hug. And they're always like, oh, all right, okay, all right, thank you. You keep you, I keep mine. Thank you. So